To 2100 hours and a minute past. A very good evening to you. This is indeed Africa World Hour here on Channel Africa, the African perspective, your world, your hour. As we bring you countless stories, one planet, we'd like to get your perspective. Let us know what's happening in your world as we tell you what's happening in and around your world, from the heart of Africa to all the corners of the globe. 60 minutes, one planet, countless stories, as we say. We also bring you the news, the voices, and the perspectives that matter. So tell us what's shaping your conversation. We'd like to hear from you. 063 406 9126. That's where you can send your WhatsApp messages or voice notes. You can also tell us what's happening on info@channelafrica.org. That's via email. And you can also just speak to us via the social media platforms, X at Channel Africa 1. That's where you'll find us on TikTok, Instagram as well. And you can listen to us live on the DSTV audio bouquet 802. And you can download the SABC Plus app and watch us as you stream live, also on OpenView channel 628. I'm Tsepiso Magweka. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's tell you what's making news at this hour. Just a reminder that you can also weigh in on some of those top stories. So let's go straight to it. We start with Gaza. The UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, accusing dozens of companies of being complicit in war crimes in Gaza and the West Bank. The BBC's Imogen Foakes has more on this.
She includes arms manufacturers Lockheed Martin for selling weapons, Alphabet, IBM, Microsoft and Amazon for providing technology which allows Israel to target Palestinians, Caterpillar, Hyundai and Volvo for vehicles used for demolishing homes, and banks BNP Paribas and Barclays for underwriting Israeli treasury bonds throughout the conflict. Ms. Albanese says all the companies should stop dealing with Israel immediately. Israel rejects the charge of genocide and has called the report groundless, defamatory and a flagrant abuse of office.
Thailand has a new prime minister for the third time in 2 years after the Constitutional Court suspended Paetongtarn Shinawatra from the role over a leaked conversation in which she had with a former Cambodian leader. The new premier is Putham Waichuchuyachig, a veteran politician from Ms. Paetongtarn's party. The BBC's Jonathan Head reports from Bangkok.
The new caretaker Prime Minister is an experienced political operator. Many Thais will welcome that after the inexperienced Paetongtarn Shinawatra, whose sole qualification for the job had been her family name. But the new Prime Minister, Phumtham Wechayachai, only has the job until the court makes a final ruling. If, as expected, it disqualifies Ms. Paetongtarn, her party will struggle to form yet another coalition after one of the larger parties broke ranks and moved into opposition. Some are now calling for a new election.
US President Donald Trump's flagship tax and spending bill has cleared its first procedural hurdle in the US House of Representatives, but it's taking many hours to win the round. Dissenting Republicans worrying that the bill will greatly increase US national debt and deprive millions of healthcare. Trump has personally put pressure on lawmakers to get the legislation signed off by tomorrow when the US celebrates Independence Day. The BBC's Anthony Zurcher has this report.
In his view, it's going to spur economic growth. And a lot of these tax cuts were ones that were passed in his first term in office. So they're being renewed now, adding some new ones on top, like no tax on tip income, no tax on overtime. And so he views these as a stimulation for the economy. He thinks that the economy is going to grow so much that it'll make up for the budget deficits that are projected. Now, most economists think that's an unrealistic view, but Donald Trump has been advocating this. He did it on the campaign trail. So in his view, he's following through on campaign promises he made.
And political analyst Donald Taladzi says the onus is on former Gabon President Ali Bongo to prove that he is being tortured by the government of the day. Bongo has appeared before investigative judges in Paris as part of a legal process he initiated. It follows allegations of torture, abduction and detention by an organized group. The complaint stems from events surrounding the military takeover that removed him from power in 2023. President Brice Oligui Nguema has denied these allegations. Taladzi elaborates.
I think it's going to be a case of he says, she says. That's what this thing is all. The court action will all be about, because I sincerely doubt that Ali Bongo and his family have any evidence that they were tortured. There was no reason that the current government or the let's say the then junta regime will resort to violence against Ali Bongo's family. Do not forget that the current president is actually an extended relative of the Bongo family.
And in South Africa, the Action SA party says access to healthcare has been inappropriately extended to undocumented foreign nationals in a manner that places immense pressure on an already overburdened system. This after the South African Human Rights Commissions came in support of undocumented migrants' right to public healthcare. The party submitted a suit of proposed constitutional amendments to mitigate South Africa's illegal immigration crisis. Action SA Parliamentary Chief Whip Lerato Ngobeni.
The South African Human Rights Commission and their NGO friends and cheerleaders honestly have turned their mandates into weapons to shame ordinary South Africans into being docile bystanders. Our country is collapsing around us, and they don't protect rights anymore. They protect the comfortable and, we believe, moral high ground of the political elite. If they had any backbone about what they are saying, they should stop attacking South Africans who are struggling under these circumstances. Borders must be fixed. We must restore the rule of law in this country. We must clean up home affairs, and we must stop turning our hospitals into shelters for everyone else except for the people who actually pay for them.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
8 minutes past 9, Africa World Hour continues as we were talking about the change of guard in Thailand. We'll also be talking about what those parameters are constitutionally in Guinea when we look at the political landscape there and the unveiling of a controversial draft new constitution. But back to South Africa, where news came in that grabbed the attention of many. South Africa mourning the passing of its former deputy president, David Mabuza, who died at the age of 4 in a Johannesburg hospital. Mabuza, who served as deputy president between 2018 and 2023, was a key figure of the ruling ANC government and previously served as premier of the Mpumalanga province. Known for his behind-the-scenes political influence, he played a pivotal role in President Cyril Ramaphosa's rise to power in 2017 to reflect on his life, legacy, and lesser-known sides of the man, often dubbed the Cat. We're joined now by Dr. David Dube, longtime friend, political ally, and former deputy to Mabuza when he served as ANC chairperson in Mpumalanga. A very good evening to you, Dr. Dube. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Great evening to you, and thank you for everyone. And I'm happy for you to interact with me on the matter of this leader that I know very well. Thank you. And
when did you learn of his passing?
Today, around late afternoon.
Okay, so
I was not aware. I was not even. I was in hospital.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you next. That when was the last time you spoke to him? Was he in good health the last time you interacted with him?
I spoke with him very, very long. Because we had a fallout. So I won't lie that we did not have a fallout. We had a fallout. The fallout was politically motivated. And as a result, I even wrote a book. The book was supposed to go out now, July. And it's involved there in the book. Now, for political reasons, I won't be able to take the book out anymore because it's not there now. But well, yes, fallout, and I know him very well. The fallout is political, so I can talk to him.
Okay, we can. I'm sorry, unfortunately, the line keeps breaking, but we'll come back to the book. And if I heard you correctly, were you saying he was involved in the writing of the book or the content of the book?
No. I wrote the book.
Was he aware of the
book? I
book?
also include him in the book.
Oh, okay. And he was aware that you were writing such a book?
Oh, everyone follows me. They know he has got people everywhere. So they tell him. So I did not hide. I have snippets. And I tell in snippets when the book is. So a number of people are following me. So it's not a secret.
So you say everybody who knew you or who knew him, he'd have people follow you. Just give us a sense of the character of the man. As we mentioned that he had this nickname, the Cat, in South Africa, which also alluded to a stealth manner of doing things. We mentioned the behind the scenes, but others saw him more as sneaky and wily. But as a politician, how was he? How would you describe him? How would he have been described in this book that you are writing?
All right, let me describe him within the framework of. You see, in Mpumalanga, you have got 40% of people that like the man. You have got 40% of people who don't like the man. You have got 10% of people who extremely like him. You then have another 10% who extremely hate the man. So then when you put it together, it gives you 50%. So from that,
I'm going to ask this, Dr. Dube. Unfortunately, it's very difficult listening for me because your every second word is cut off. I'm going to ask that we reconnect with you, even if it's just on audio, so that I can hear you clearly and follow the conversation properly.
Oh, that's fine. No problem.
All right. Thank you.
Have you been struggling to find Channel Africa?
Oh yes, where can I find you guys?
Well, you are in luck.
Warning, radioactive zone detected. Please enter.
Listen to the African perspective on our brand new SABC Plus app. Download the fresh and easy to use app from sabcplus.com or the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Or just command your phone to find SABC Plus on your phone and check out all this good stuff. And that's where you will find Channel Africa, the African perspective. Oh yes, this is fresh and easy. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And we are back on the discussion on the passing of the ANC's and South Africa's former deputy president. We are joined by Dr. David Dube, who says he is a longtime friend, but they had a fallout with the former deputy president. You were so just his political character, how he knew him. You were giving us percentages of how many people liked him or how many didn't, but I just want to understand how that translated in him as a politician and his organizational capacity.
All right. When I speak here, it should be understood that I know the man very, very well. And I spoke with the man while we were still at college, Mkwenya College. Our mentor has passed on. It's Sipho City Sukati. If there's a man that can claim that he has built us, it's Sipho Sukati. He's no longer. He also built David Mabuza. And then after we went our different. I went to Steelport. That's where politician career, he worked in the Eastern Front, and specifically in an area where they call it countries. That's where his politics grew. And then after the elections 1994, and then the ANC had to reconfigure its structures. And then David Mabuza became the chairperson of the Great region. I became the chairperson of the Witbank region. And then we had to come together as ex officio under the leadership of the former chairperson, Dr. Matthew Pos. And then when we came back from Bloemfontein in 1994, we were then elected as chairperson. So I became the chairperson of the Witbank region, and then Mabuza went into the
Dr. Dube, I don't mean to rush you, but time is of the essence, and I wonder if you could just give us maybe in more succinct details, the type of politician he became. I'll give you examples of, for instance, what Patricia de Lille has said, that she had a great deal of admiration for his respect for time and process. And Action SA through Herman Mashaba is saying, his legacy will undoubtedly unfold over the next couple of days. So if you were just to give us succinctly a characterization of a man who some have said was beset by corruption scandals, there were all sorts of rumors about him, and some even say actually had it not been for him, President Cyril Ramaphosa would not be president.
Okay, great. Now let's go back to that characterization which I gave you of the 100%. That's where I should have been, because that's where you will get everything. You see, there are people that he has built. We cannot take it away from him. They revere him. They worship him. Because there are things that he has done which are good for them. We cannot take it away from him that he had a good heart. But unfortunately, he was surrounded by people who could go and lie to him. And when they tell him, he takes action on the basis of the lies of those people without verifying. And then when he realizes that he is at fault, he will not come back and apologize. Apologizing was never stationary. And as a result, people who misled him are the ones that made people to hate him, while he was someone that had a different heart other than the one presented by those people who were misleading him. Then you have got those people who literally were against him, not because of him having a bad heart, because of him being told the lies, that he take actions against those people whom they lied.
So could he then be described as a man who at some point showed poor judgment?
Yes. Without any doubt, many good comrades suffered under this man because they were lied to and took actions against those people. Many great leaders, they are in the periphery. Then there are those who on their own will tell a very good story, that he has done so many things, which we all know in Mpumalanga. We cannot take it away from him. As I indicated, that he had his shortcomings, strong points, and those strong points are those that we must remember him with.
Okay. Dr. Dube, May I ask a final question because, and I know some would say it's insensitive at this point, but it's been a long-running rumor that is connected to his political life when he was premier at Mpumalanga. It was said that the poisoning incident emanates from that. Were you aware of this, and was it something that would have led to long-running health complications for the former deputy president?
At the time, we already had our fallout. But I want to believe that he might have been poisoned by people who were not far from him. But unfortunately, I cannot confirm him because we already had our own fallout. But yes, I believe he was poisoned by people who were not far from him. For what reason, I don't know.
All right. Dr. David.
I must also say that when we judge this man, we must accept that we've got our own shortcomings and we've got our own strong points. He is not immune from that. And we must not judge him on the basis of the bad stuff that happened because of other people misleading him. We must remember he is also a man. He had shortcomings. He had a good heart, like all of us. And when we must know that there's no one that is immune. We must, as a result, forgive his shortcomings.
Point taken, Dr. Dube. Dr. David Dube, former deputy to David Mabuza in the Mpumalanga ANC, and as he said, once a close friend, underscoring the fallibility of the man, saying he, like the rest of us, was prone to bad judgment, but did a lot of good things as well, and that's how he should be remembered. 9:22.
Ikiwa wewe ni msanii chipukizi na unayetaka kutambulisha muziki wako kwa hadhira pana, au unataka kutangaza muziki wako kwenye redio, tunaweza kusaidia, lakini kuna mambo machache unayoweza kufanya ili kuongeza nafasi zako za kufaulu. Tutumie muziki wako kupitia music@channelafrica.co.za. Tazama, tunahitaji maelezo yafuatayo kusaidia vyema. Lebo, alama ya siri ya ISRC, kichwa, mwigizaji, mtunzi, mchapishaji, mwandishi, lugha na aina. Sikiliza wimbo wako kwenye redio, wimbo bora wa siku yako. Ukiwa na Channel Africa na muziki wako, hutawahi kuchoshwa kwa sababu tutacheza muziki wako. Pata uzoefu bora zaidi katika muziki wa Kiafrika, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Nelson Mandela taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it.
We should all bear in mind that the greatest glory of living lies not in never falling, every time you fall.
This Mandela Month, Channel Africa salutes everyday heroes. On Channel Africa, the African perspective. Catch us on Satellite Channel PAS 10. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
9:23. We continue with a conversation that we touched on yesterday, and that is safety and security as well as democracy in West Africa. We spoke about Guinea, and now we go back to looking at Guinea's political landscape. It's once again stirring debate following the unveiling of what's being regarded as a controversial draft constitution, the new text, which proposes a single 7-year presidential term renewable once, notably opens the door for military leader Mamadi Doumbouya to run in the upcoming elections, despite earlier commitments to a civilian-led transition. Critics warn this move risks entrenching military rule and undermining democratic process, not only in Guinea but across West Africa. Tonight we speak to political analyst Dr. Douglas Yates, who specializes in African politics, to speak about this draft constitution and what it means for the future of Guinea and the broader region. A very good evening to you, Dr. Yates. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for inviting me.
This latest development in draft constitution, is it out of the blue? Is it a surprise, given the murmurings that we've seen over the past couple of years, where even accusations were made that it seems that Doumbouya has no interest in handing over to a civilian government?
You're right. I don't believe he ever had any interest in handing over power, either to a military government, to a coup within a coup, to a counter coup, or to an elected opponent. He has taken power by force, and he will keep it by force if he has to. But I think he looks at the model of Gabon. The most successful of all these coups in West Africa has been Gabon, where Brice Oligui Nguema created a new constitution which allowed him to run as president, created 2 terms, 7-year terms, remarkable parallels. And then he ran an election, and then he won in it, and now he's the elected president of Gabon. I think that's the intention. That's the intention of Mamadi Doumbouya.
But were things done the same, though, when you look at Gabon and its transition to quote-unquote democratic rule? And the process that was undertaken, there was, whether it was cosmetic or not, in Gabon, it was seen to have been consultative to a point, but it was clear to an extent that that was the intention, that the military government will hand over to a civilian government, which would still be the military government.
Right. So the parallels are remarkable, but I think in Guinea it's a botched job. I don't think, first of all, he has the enormous legitimacy that was enjoined by Brice Oligui Nguema, who overthrew the Bongo regime that had been in power since independence. Here, he toppled Alpha Condé, who had become an unpopular ruler, who had been a long-time democratic activist and opposition ruler, a man who had done time in prison, in exile. So the person who was overthrown in Guinea wasn't a dynastic despot like Ali Bongo. And as well, he's dragged it out. His coup in Guinea, Doumbouya's coup, was almost 4 years ago. And in that time, he started off with that kind of wave of popular support. You know, the man who overthrew the bad leader and will stand up for the people. And then he himself became a tyrant. He started arresting opposition leaders. He threatened people with life imprisonment when they did peaceful protests against him. He cut deals with Russia to pillage the country's aluminum and bauxite. And now he's, tailor making a constitution so he can civilianize his regime. So it took 4 years, and over that time, he's lost that splendor that the coup leaders could enjoy when they're making promises and people aren't tired of them. Fortunately for him, Guinea's a country that hasn't known much democracy. And so people who are democratic activists tend to be divided, tend to be in exile, tend to be afraid, willing to make deals. And I think he even if there were popular protests in the street, he would shoot them down, as he has shown by pardoning Captain Dodis Camara. Captain Dodis was the drug-addled madman who had massacred his own civilians in a stadium. He was convicted of that, and just a month ago, President General Doumbouya pardoned him. So I don't think he has any qualms about doing the same.
And your use of the words "fortunately for him," and you'll expand a little further, and I understand what you mean, but it's ironic at a time when there has been a great deal more conversation about military overreach, and if we are seeing a trend that is likely to spread not only across the continent, but certain regions of the continent. So is that something to be gravely concerned about?
Absolutely. So the social science studies of coups have really been developing. And we've got studies now where they have large numbers of cases. Some of these studies have hundreds of cases, 220 cases of coup d'etat in Africa since independence, 220 cases. And one of the things we've learned is that there is a contagion in coups. One is a vertical contagion. So one of the outcomes that could happen for Doumbia is he himself will be overthrown by a coup. This is called vertical contagion, but the other is horizontal contagion. And that is coups spread regionally. And what he has participated is a coup wave. And that coup wave can spread more because it offers two things to other military leaders. It offers a model of how to do a coup, and it offers an incentive. When they do a cost-benefit analysis, they go, well, the costs are much lower than the benefits. So, this is a danger for the region. Not just that there were a lot of coups. This was foreseeable when almost all of the aid money going to that region was military aid. This man, Mamadi Doumbouya, was a French legionnaire who had received French military training, and then he got American military training where he met another coup leader, the one who staged the coup in Mali. So these people have the resources, they have the training. Instead of giving aid to these countries who've been training their militaries, it's no surprise there have been military coups in this region. It's the only business that was successful in those countries. But the coup contagion hypothesis, which has been tested empirically, says that they're offering models to others. And the last time we've seen this was in the 1970s and the 1980s, during the Cold War, when West Africa was plagued by worse and worse military leaders. You know, you'd start with a general, then you'd have a colonel, and pretty soon you'd be down to a flight lieutenant. So, coups within coups, that's one danger. Great instability and the worst kind of military rule. No development project, Praetorianism, where different cliques within the military attack each other, and the people are left to be massacred and tyrannized, and democratic activists punished, and horizontal coups. And now in the new Cold War, where Russia supports any country in West Africa that stages a coup, they've got support. They'll get weapons. They can get ammunition. They can get jets. They can get satellites. And they can get that precious internet support on social media, because the people in those countries don't have proper media. They rely entirely on social media for their disinformation. And all of that's made a lovely cocktail for military rule.
I want to talk about the role of Western powers, Western actors in, as you say, initially empowering some of these coup leaders. But we've seen a totally different outcome, particularly in Burkina Faso, in Mali, where they've been ousting the French. So it then brings us to this question of what appears to me as a dichotomy. So if it is those outside actors that empower the coup leaders, and yet they then go on to take on their own quote unquote national identity or desires, does that mean that the rejection of those colonial apron strings in itself is wrong?
Yes. So it's an apparent paradox. How could a series of military men who were entirely trained by France and America now be allies with Russia? It seems paradoxical. And the solution to that is when you examine coups, they go through phases. And the first phase is coming to power. And there you could blame France and the United States. These people were made in France, made in the United States. But once they've come to power, all military rulers have a legitimacy crisis. They have a problem of legitimacy. What's their legitimacy to rule? One form of legitimacy is they could do something, like they could provide development or reduce poverty or do something. But that's not happening in any of these countries. They promised to fight the terrorists are winning. They promised to eliminate poverty, nothing's been done. They've promised to reinstore democracy, but they can't, because if they reinstore democracy, they're going to saw off the branch they're sitting on. So what do military leaders need to do to restore their legitimacy? You need to find external enemies. And France was sitting there as a low-lying fruit, easy to pick off the trees. after a half century of neocolonialism and French affaiриsts, that is businessmen, not the French people, but businessmen who've profited by supporting dictators and doing corrupt business, and a large amount of literature, including from scholars like me, who have, rowed against the CFA franc and the military interventions and the neocolonial relations. There's a lot of material. And so what these military rulers did to get their legitimacy was not win the war on terror, not improve the conditions of their people, and not instaure democracy. They said, your problem is France. And that's a simple message. And Russian intelligence, with using social media, have won the hearts and minds of 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds in those countries. And that's all the legitimacy they need. But as far as if you're going, why even make a constitution? Why hold elections? Well, eventually they need to be respectable. They need to take off their military uniforms. They need to put on their suits to be able to attend those international forums where they can get debt relief and development aid and turnkey factories. So they got to be able to put on suits and ties and come to Paris and go to London and do business in China. And for that, they need to be respectable. And so the Gabon model seems good to them, even if they haven't executed it well.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Dr. Douglas Yates, he is a political scientist, speaking to us on Guinea, the latest political developments unfolding there, the military and constitutions. Does the military respect constitutions and the powers that get the military to those positions, extended legitimacy or tenure elongation, some of what we're reflecting on there. That brings the time to 23 minutes to 10.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Cette peur d'un point de non-retour nucléaire suffit-elle selon vous à légitimer une telle offensive, Monsieur Talati?
Absolument pas du tout. Cela fait plus de 30 ans que l'Israël crie haut et fort sur les toits, où il veut se faire entendre que l'Iran serait à 1 an pour obtenir l'arme nucléaire. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 6 mois. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 2 semaines pour obtenir son arme nucléaire. Et curieusement, jusqu'à ce jour, il n'y a toujours aucune preuve que l'Iran a obtenu cette arme nucléaire depuis les déclarations d'Israël et de certaines puissances parfois.
Vue d'Afrique, du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
In recent weeks, East Africa has seen a disturbing rise in human rights violations. In Kenya, digital activist Rose Njeri was arrested under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act after creating a tool for citizens to oppose the Finance Bill 2025. Meanwhile, in Tanzania, Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan lawyer Agatha Tuhaire reported being detained, tortured, and sexually assaulted by security officers.
East Africa needs a reset. We need to get back East Africa to where the founding fathers are. When President Nyerere and his colleagues, Jomo Kenyatta and the Ugandan counterparts fought for independence. They fought for independence to get Africans out of poverty, to get Africans out of slavery. The leaders who took up power have since gotten into regression.
Neto Agostino, co-leader of the United Green Movement Party.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And we continue with some of the top stories today. This is one of those communiques that was sent out that the World Health Organization is launching a bold new campaign. It's aimed at reducing the global burden of non-communicable diseases by targeting 3 major risk factors: tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks, known as the 3x35 initiative. The plan calls on countries to raise the real prices of these products by at least 50% by 2035. through targeted health taxes. The WHO says this could save up to 50 million lives and generate over $1 trillion in public revenue. To speak about what this means for public health policy and global development, we're joined by Dr. Robert Totanis, Technical Officer for Non-Communicable Diseases and Social Determinants of Health at the World Health Organization. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
So this is interesting, even though I know the World Health Organization has been pushing for this, particularly for countries that haven't, for instance, implemented the sugar tax or even on tobacco products. Would this be something that would be implemented gradually over the next, it's 9 years now, or are you hoping that it would be one major tax hike that will shock people into giving up these habits?
Thank you for the question. So basically, just to reiterate that the 3x35 initiative calls for a 50% real price increase on these three unhealthy products that you mentioned, tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks. Essentially, when we look at these taxes, they work better when there is one massive increase. However, we're very cognizant of the fact that a lot of countries won't be able to increase the taxes and prices on those unhealthy products by that much, by that soon. So that's why we also see the possibility of countries increasing the prices of these products gradually over 10 years. And I think the point really is to increase the real prices of these taxes to make them less affordable compared to other products on the market. So that's really the crux of the initiative.
And obviously this would be linked to studies and evidence of the harm that these products do on people who consume them, who use them. What has been the past impact of the release? I mean, there have been various attempts to, for instance, lure people away from cigarettes. We saw on World No Tobacco Day here in South Africa the discussion around the rise in e-vape, e-cigarettes, etc., etc. But it seems that people just keep on finding ways to still consume some of these harmful products. So what has been the evidence in what works and what doesn't beyond the taxes? I know the taxes is a tool, but what has been the evidence in convincing people that these products are harmful to health?
I think, well, number one, the taxes in of themselves are still underutilized. For tobacco taxes, in particular, tobacco tax is the most underutilized tobacco control measure globally, and we have a suite of different interventions that does address this. So I think to answer your question, the first part is that taxes are still quite underutilized. On the second part of your question, on other measures to convince people to stop or to quit, basically to reduce the consumption of these products. Again, WHO recommends a suite of interventions depending on the product. So, for example, for alcohol, we also recommend the restriction of points of sale of alcohol, apart from increasing alcohol taxes, as well as mass media campaigns warning about the dangers of alcohol. The same with tobacco. And we have a technical package called Empower, which stands for different policies, basically that target different aspects, such as smoke-free policies, advertising bans on tobacco, as well as graphic health warnings on these packets. So really, I think just to reiterate the point that people consume these products for a number of reasons. And I think as governments, as responsible governments, it's their basically task and their responsibility to make sure that the environment that they create for their population is as healthy as possible. And that means regulating different points or different angles through which these products can be regulated.
And to your point, is there enough multi-sectoral alliance efforts? Because the figures that I've seen, and I'm sure certainly you've heard this before, that these taxes often impact on lower income groups more than the higher echelons of society. I mean, if you think about healthy eating, for instance, it's the poor who can't afford it because it's so expensive. That healthy fresh produce is more expensive. That's why people go to junk food, including these sweet sugary drinks that they go to. So is there enough being done by governments or support structures for low income groups to give up some of these unhealthy habits?
Certainly, I think it's an area that a lot of governments can improve upon. But I think in terms of where the conversation is right now with regard to health taxes, I think it's important to also look at this from a wider perspective, right? I think ill health is really the most unfair and unequal tax that the poor are already quite burdened with. As you mentioned, it is the lower income groups that often consume more of these unhealthy products. And part of the reason is really that these products are so affordable. And we're just looking at the past decade, the past couple of decades, while a lot of countries have increased their taxes on some of these products, tobacco, alcohol, etc., these taxes haven't kept pace with inflation, meaning that relative to other goods, these products, tobacco, alcohol, sugary drinks, have become less expensive and much easier to buy for the population. So I think in terms of when you look at it from the bigger perspective about the economic benefits of this, when you look at it from the social benefits perspective, reducing consumption of these products will really lead to a lot of benefits down the road for the low income populations in particular. You look at out-of-pocket health spending. You look at foregone income from unemployment. You look at the opportunity costs from family members who need to care for their family who is sick with a chronic disease. So when you look at this and when you see and compare it with the taxes that are being implemented or that will be implemented, it's really relatively a drop in the bucket, so to speak, with the economic benefits that this can potentially have.
Are there countries that have done this and shown it to be a success, to be an example for their peers? And I'm thinking of a country such as Mauritius. I'm fascinated to see that they have consumption of tobacco at something like levels like 20%. And over the past couple of years, it's been decreasing over the years. What have they done right? But most importantly, about the transparency and accountability of where those tax funds go, if that is what is happening in a country like Mauritius or countries that are already doing that.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, we have a lot of countries that have done it, and I'll name a few specifically. But I think what's important to highlight here is that these interventions are already being done, and we know that they work in a lot of countries. You mentioned Mauritius. Mauritius had recently, 2 years ago, they had recently achieved the highest level of implementation for all the Empower tobacco control measures that the WHO recommends. And they were quite successful in that. They've reduced taxes and in effect, they've seen decreases in consumption in tobacco. And you mentioned something about basically what I call would be earmarking these taxes. So I think this could be a good tool for some governments where it is applicable. In the Philippines, for instance, I know this example quite well. They raised the tobacco taxes significantly before, and then the government used that revenue basically to fund health insurance premiums, mostly for the poor, but then they extended it to a wider source of the population. So in that sense, it's basically the government, and it's a good policy strategy, I think, for policymakers to consider earmarking, maybe soft earmarking the revenues from these health taxes towards purposes that also serve to support or strengthen the health of the population. Can go to.
All right. Thank you so much for your.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, sorry. I thought you were done. I really appreciate your time, though, and sharing with us those figures from the studies and examples that you've seen around the world. Dr. Robert Tutanas, Technical Officer for Non-Communicable Diseases and Social Determinants of Health at the World Health Organization, which is asking countries to increase by as much as 50% until the year 2035 taxes on 3 products, tobaccos, alcohol and sugary drinks.
Stella Longwe, Pamalonje.
Palitu sokoma pano pamalonje. Kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa, kusangalala, kupeza moyo. Akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino. Pano pamalonje. Ndiyetu apa ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa. Ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi, aziwoneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa. Akuti kumenya yonse. Aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje, panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tshepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa.
And we round off with this. Unpacking a concerning new global study just published on The Lancet. It reveals how decades of progress in childhood immunization is stalling, with millions of children left vulnerable to preventable diseases like measles and polio. Despite saving an estimated 154 million lives over the last 50 years, the global vaccine drive, known as the Expanded Program on Immunization, is now at a crossroads. Inequality, misinformation, and the effects of COVID are threatening to reverse hard-won gains. Speaking to us now is Dr. Emily Hauser, a lead author of the analysis and researcher with the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Hauser. It's sad to hear that when you think you are 5 steps ahead, you are forced another 6 backwards. So just how bad is the picture now? Because I know, for instance, the WHO has been working very hard to scale up immunization on things like polio, and it seems to have made some sort of progress in some countries, in some regions. But measles, are we saying that we are seeing more and more people, or children at least, contracting that?
I would say, that we are at a pivotal moment in time right now where we need to remember the successes in immunization that we've had for the past 5 decades and redouble our collective commitment to vaccination as a global community. Tremendous gains have been made in global childhood vaccination over the past 50 years, with more than 4 billion children vaccinated worldwide. Since 1980, coverage of vaccines against diseases like measles, polio, and pertussis has more than doubled. But as you say, in recent years, progress has stalled, particularly in high-income countries and in the Americas. And then, as you say, with COVID-19, with the health system disrupted, we estimated that more than 15 million children missed out on key childhood vaccines due to the pandemic. And those children were disproportionately concentrated in regions with lower vaccine coverage to begin with. So since the pandemic, coverage has improved overall, but it still hasn't fully returned to pre-pandemic levels. So as a result of these trends, when we look at forecasts of coverage into the future, we found that we're not on pace to reach some of those key global targets that have been set for 2030, such as reaching 90% global coverage or halving the number of zero-dose children. That is, children who haven't received any single doses of vaccines compared to 2019. But that doesn't mean that we should give up. The evidence couldn't be more clear that vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, and vaccines save lives. This is a moment for renewed global commitment to immunization at all levels. And we need, in the decades to come, strong global commitment from organizations like the WHO, as well as support from governments and local partners to ensure that national immunization programs have the resources they need to tailor vaccination strategies to their communities and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to benefit from the protection that vaccines provide.
So I want to juxtapose inequality versus misinformation. What have your studies revealed? Because we saw in COVID-19 the rise of anti-vaxxers, so to speak, and also what spurred that on? Was it really the bad, uncomfortable experiences that people had from vaccination, or was it simply the power of propaganda?
The challenges and the barriers that lead to the failure to immunize, they really vary broadly from country to country and community to community. And in some cases, propaganda plays a role. In some cases, those uncomfortable experiences play a role. In some cases, those inequalities and lack of access play a role. It really varies, and it means that we really need contextually tailored and locally informed solutions in each case. Some key strategies that have worked include improved awareness and education, mobile vaccination units, community engagement, motivational incentives, and assurance of vaccine safety. But we really need increased partnerships with, local community leaders and religious leaders. And we need to equip and elevate more local healthcare providers who remain the most trusted voices on vaccination to have those impactful conversations and overcome those other forces in people's decisions to immunize.
So what can countries do to introduce the idea of zero dose for children who've received no vaccination at all, and also to just speed up on those backlogs?
Yeah. So, zero dose children are at risk for contracting many preventable diseases, and they represent those children who have not been successfully reached by existing routine vaccine strategies or interventions. So this means that to reach these children, more novel approaches may be needed to reach them. These are children that not only haven't been vaccinated, but they're children that have generally been fundamentally missed by routine health services overall. They're children, and these children in their communities, they face multiple deprivations and vulnerabilities, not just including lack of vaccination, but lack of other health services and other socioeconomic or gender-based inequities. They often have limited access to water, to sanitation, to education, and a number of zero-dose children live in close proximity to conflict. So strategies for reaching zero-dose children will probably not only involve vaccination strategies, but more integrated approaches that would provide multifaceted equity benefits beyond just minimizing preventable disease risk and burden.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Wish we had more time to talk, but appreciate it. Dr. Emily Hauser, lead author of a major new global analysis study on childhood immunization. It's just been published in The Lancet, just speaking to us about some of the challenges and what countries can do to increase immunization. So the study says, despite saving an estimated 154 million lives over the last 50 years, the global vaccine drive, known as the Expanded Program on Immunization, is now at a crossroads. So it brings the time to 9:50. Let's find out what is going to come up on Hotlines this evening. Love After Dark. Nola.
Yes. Hi, how are you?
There's a way of saying it. You can't just say love after. You gotta put that.
We're cool with that. We're cool with that. Actually, we are going to be keeping up with the momentum. I think it would be fitting to just pick up on what you just discussed there. However, today on Headlines, we're focusing on self-love and health related measures. We're going to be getting into aesthetics, right? I see a lot of Black women are now gravitating towards aesthetics for health and beauty. So we're going to dive a little bit into that and hear what kind of programs are available, what are the risky ones, and so on and so forth.
Are we talking like on a superficial level? Because I know like basically everybody's doing hair, nails, and and lashes. Like you go to the spa, the cashier's better groomed than you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, actually, we're going a little bit deeper. We're going to be discussing the non-invasive and the invasive kind of procedures that certain ladies fly to Turkey to do. Right? Yeah, and then we're also going to be speaking to a master's student in vaccinology who are also going to be talking to us about, the different strains of flus and colds, the difference between bacteria and viral infections.
I mean, you heard the last bit of the conversation we had yesterday about employee healthcare and the importance thereof because of how many more people are just getting so sick.
Yes.
And there is a COVID variant that is going around. They say though it has greater virility, it's not more dangerous, but the bottom line is many, many, many people are getting ill. And we've really backtracked on the health measures that we're taking during COVID. Sanitization, covering
people
up.
Don't do that anymore.
We're not doing that, and they were surprised why people are getting more ill. So yes, health is wealth, and you only realize that when you don't have your health.
Absolutely.
Right, Nola, thank you very much. Enjoy your show. Please do stay tuned in here on Channel Africa, the Africa Perspective. That's it from Africa World Hour this evening from us. Good night. See you tomorrow.
Hotlines bring you fresh perspectives about love after dark. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current